was staring at the framed photograph of myself and my late husband, Arthur, when the email arrived. It was terse, professional, and utterly gut-wrenching. Effective immediately, your employment with Phoenix Dynamics has been terminated. Your severance package details are attached. I read the words again, blinking. Terminated? I was Eleanor Vance, and I was 62 years old. My husband and I had founded Phoenix Dynamics 35 years ago in our garage. Just 6 months earlier, Arthur had died in a hiking accident. Since then, our only son, Daniel, had been stepping up to run the company, or so I thought. I looked up as the office door swung open. It was Daniel, flanked by his aggressive new VP, Marcus Thorne. Daniel's face was pale, but his voice was chillingly devoid of emotion. "It's true, Mom," he said. "Marcus and I reviewed the books. You've been a drag on efficiency. We've decided to streamline leadership." They fired me. Me, the woman who signed their paychecks, who had sacrificed everything to build that company, who was still wearing black for the father he barely mourned. My own son had fired me from my own life's work. I felt a cold, deep well of betrayal. 40 years of motherhood, of sacrifice, all tossed aside for efficiency? But I didn't cry. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. Because there was one thing my dear son and his vulture of a VP didn't know.
The truth was, the last 2 years of my marriage hadn't been easy. Arthur and I had been fighting over Daniel's reckless spending and Marcus's toxic influence. Arthur had seen this moment coming. 3 months before his death, he had called me into his study. He wasn't well. He'd had a minor stroke that he'd kept hidden. He handed me a simple brown leather journal. "Eleanor," he whispered, his hand shaking, "keep this safe. If anything happens to me, you are not to open this until you feel you have been pushed completely out." I had dismissed it as my weary husband's paranoia. I had hidden the journal in a drawer filled with old tax receipts and forgotten it amidst the chaos of the funeral. Now, sitting in the office that was no longer mine, the memory hit me like a physical blow. The journal. I stood up, gathering my purse. Daniel watched me, his relief palpable. "I'll have security escort you out, Mom." "No need, dear," I said, putting on my most brittle, defeated expression. "I know the way." As I walked through the halls, past the faces of employees who couldn't meet my eye, I thought about that journal. Arthur was a genius. He would never have left me defenseless. When I got home, I went straight to the drawer. The leather was soft, worn. I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger filled with Arthur's meticulous, familiar handwriting. What I found inside didn't just shock me. It shifted the very foundation of reality. Arthur had anticipated the coup. Over the last 5 years, he had been systematically splitting the company's assets. He had created a parallel entity, a holding company called the Vanguard Group, named after his favorite warship model. According to the ledger and the attached notarized documents, Arthur had transferred the ownership of all Phoenix Dynamics physical real estate, including the sprawling corporate campus, the 3 manufacturing plants, and all patent rights, to the Vanguard Group. I, Eleanor Vance, was the sole anonymous owner of the Vanguard Group. Phoenix Dynamics, the corporation Daniel now controlled, was nothing more than a shell of its former self, a tenant operating in buildings it no longer owns, using patents it was only leasing. My son had fired me from a company that was financially hollow,
controlled by a company that was mine. I laughed, a deep, unrestrained laugh of pure, terrifying realization. The game was on. The following weeks were a masterclass in silent espionage. To the world, I was the grieving, suddenly unemployed widow. My neighbor, Carol, would stop by with casseroles and pity. "Eleanor, dear, it's a tragedy. Your own son. But you're so smart. You'll land on your feet." "If you only knew, Carol," I thought, smiling politely. I immediately contacted Arthur's longtime personal attorney, Mr. Albright, and presented the journal. His jaw dropped as he reviewed the documents. "Mrs. Vance, this is extraordinary. Arthur essentially built a life raft for you. Daniel and Marcus are sailing a sinking ship, completely unaware they are tenants in a domain that is now yours." My instructions were clear. Confirm absolute, airtight ownership of the Vanguard Group and its assets. Maintain complete secrecy. No one, especially Daniel or Marcus, was to know I was the Vanguard. Investigate the finances of Phoenix Dynamics. I wanted to know exactly how deep Daniel and Marcus had dug the company's hole. The reports came back quickly. Daniel, guided by Marcus, had started aggressively over-leveraging the company. They had secured massive bank loans, using the corporate campus as collateral, completely unaware that Phoenix Dynamics didn't legally own the property. The banks assumed the collateral was valid. "They're spending like drunken sailors, Mrs. Vance," Albright informed me. "They've missed several key lease payments on the patents, leases due to the Vanguard Group." Perfect. "Mr. Albright," I said, my voice sharp and clear, "I need you to prepare a legal document, a single, very specific document. I want an immediate eviction notice for breach of patent lease, addressed to Daniel Vance, CEO of Phoenix Dynamics." Albright cleared his throat. "Are you absolutely sure, Eleanor? It's severe." He fired me from my life's work, Mr. Albright. Now he's going to discover the cost of inefficiency. The eviction notice was served on a Friday afternoon. On Monday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Daniel, looking utterly shattered. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair a mess. "Mom, you have to help me. This is insane. Phoenix Dynamics has been served with an eviction notice. Some shell company called the Vanguard Group says we haven't paid the lease on our own patents. Our patents." He paced my small living room, frantic. "The banks are furious. They're pulling the loans because our collateral, the corporate campus, is suddenly tied up with this Vanguard Group too. Marcus is threatening to sue. Mom, I need you to talk to your old connections. We're losing everything." "Daniel," I said, offering him tea, my face a mask of placid concern. "I'm just a recently redundant widow. What power do I have?" You know people, Mom. You are Phoenix Dynamics. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I was stupid. Marcus convinced me it was the only way to get true control, but I never meant to hurt you. Now I have nothing, Mom. The company is facing imminent collapse. I have crippling personal debt, and Marcus is already looking for the next place to jump ship." He started to cry. For a moment, my maternal heart softened. I wanted to hug him, to tell him it was all a bad dream. Then I remembered his coldness when he fired me, his calculation. "Daniel," I said, placing my hand on his shoulder, "this is what you must do. You must legally resign from the company and transfer all your remaining shares to a new owner, the Vanguard Group. His eyes widened in fear. Vanguard? Why would they just do it? I insisted. It's the only way to avoid personal financial ruin from the bank loans. Broken and desperate, Daniel did as I instructed. 2 days later, I drove my quiet, anonymous car to the Phoenix Dynamics corporate campus. I didn't walk in the front door. I used Arthur's old private service entrance. I walked straight to the boardroom where Daniel had fired me. Daniel was gone. Marcus had vanished, and the remaining executives looked terrified. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, pulled out a pen, and signed the final legal documents. Eleanor Vance, owner and CEO of the Vanguard Group. I looked at the executives. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice strong, "welcome to the new Phoenix Dynamics. Effective immediately, I am back." The next day, Daniel received a letter. It wasn't an eviction notice. It was a check, covering the exact amount of his most crippling personal debt. The note was brief: a mother's final severance package. I would save my son, but first, he had to learn the value of the woman he had discarded. And I, the poor, dismissed widow, was now the undisputed queen of my empire.